Today, we will be talking all about things mental health and wellness. I want to also give a trigger warning that there are mentions of suicide in this episode, and if you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide, please dial the hotline at 988. My guest is one of my favorite people. We talk on the phone every day for at least an hour, so I figured why not bring her in for an episode. Oh yeah, we just so happen to be related too. Please welcome my beautiful sister, Chyna.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited that you're finally on the pod.
I know. It's about time.
Yeah, we've kind of been talking about this forever. You were my main source of motivation for starting this. And so having you on finally is like surreal. I love it.
I know. It just feels right, doesn't it?
It does. Well, so it's getting cold. It's getting crappy. We are suffering with the seasonal depression that we most likely all have here in Missouri, which, comes along with, like I said, depression.
Absolutely.
And that is what we are going to be talking about today because you have started your Instagram, your TikTok, and have really started to become an advocate for mental wellness all around. And so I want to start out by you just sharing a little bit of your story and your experiences with your own personal mental wellness. And so can you explain a little bit of like the beginning of that and when you started acknowledging that your mental health, your wellness was not in a good place?
So I would say that I didn't really acknowledge that it was in a good place until I was in my freshman year of college. But I would say that I first started noticing certain things looking back now, being as young as maybe even like 5 or 6 years old. Just I didn't know it at the time. But I would say it was my freshman year of college when I first really started to get a handle on it and just started to understand that what I was feeling wasn't necessarily quote unquote normal, or I guess what I would say is it didn't have to be that way. I didn't have to feel that way. So I was about 18 at the time.
Wow. And so were there any triggers that you can pinpoint? I mean, obviously when you're a freshman in college, like that's not easy for anybody, especially because you did go kind of local, but you were an hour and a half away from home. And just to give everybody a background, you weren't like some big partier in high school. No. You were very much a homebody and didn't do a whole lot of like the hustle and bustle of, I'm sure, the life that you were experiencing in college. So that alone is a huge culture shock, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And so then was there anything else that you were maybe going through though, that you noticed were really was triggering that for you, to make you then be like, okay, I'm not good here?
Yeah, I think there was a few things. I think it was overall just the aspect of being far away from home, and it was definitely a culture shock for me. I did start drinking. I went out a lot, and just being around different people. I was in a sorority that caused just a lot of extra stress. Nothing against the sorority. It just is extra on top of, obviously college and college classes. I had a pretty full course load, meeting new people. And I actually had somewhat of I would say one of the biggest triggers, I had a conflict, if you will, with a roommate in my suite. I had 3 other roommates in the dorm room was a suite. And the conflict really, I would say, accelerated it and really set it off just because I just think so much was being thrown at me and the stress. And then that kind of brought it to almost like the tipping point, I would say. And that's what really started to finally like bring everything up. And I would say where it got kind of the worst, I guess.
And this was something like, of course, we grew up in a household that like we could have came to our mom and, our dad and like talked to them about this. But it wasn't like a huge topic in our house. Like, it wasn't like we were like, hey, how's everybody's mental health? And I mean, I'm sure that's probably for most people. It's not usually that you're sitting down at the dinner table and mom or dad are like, hey, honey, how's your mental health? How's it going? And so it's not really like a topic. And I think we just kind of grew up of like, oh, if I'm having emotions, like, we're not really going to express that. We call each other the Stones of the family.
Yes.
I think it's obviously a lot of our personality, but, it could be the way we grew up as well. And, so I'm sure, like you said, it started when you were 5 and you notice that's when it started. Now looking back, you notice like, okay, I've had this since I was 5 and may have just not had the tools yet to heal that, and then this happened. So what I want to first talk about your first major experience with this. And by major experience, I want to say whenever you were like, something happened and you had a horrible experience with heavy suicidal thoughts. And I want you to talk about that a little bit. And obviously we talked about some of the triggers, but what was the outcome of that after this experience happened for you? Was it, okay, I need to get into therapy? What were the things that happened after this instance?
So the first time that I ever had any type of suicidal thoughts, my family came and got me from Mizzou at the time where I was going to college. And at that point, we kind of started to talk about differently, therapy, different methods. I was already medicated at the time, so that kind of stayed the same. And I did actually start in therapy with a therapist near my college, but right off the bat, I just knew that didn't really work out for me as well. And then after, I kind of was on the same medication, nothing really changed for a while. And I did finish out therapy with that specific therapist for the entirety of my school year. And then it was when then the next school year had started that things got a little bit worse for me. And then that was really what catapulted me into, I would say, my real healing journey, because I just didn't really get as much out of like the first therapy experience. It just wasn't clicking. And if you've ever been in therapy, you know that when it's not clicking, it's just not clicking.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just feel like that wasn't really affected. So going back to the second time after that point, then I actually found a therapist that I really clicked with, which I feel like that was really key to just the whole process in general. And then I also started working with a psychiatrist that I also clicked with. So I think that was a big factor into everything, I guess.
And so after this first instance that we were referring to, was that when you started group? You went to group. Okay. And that was who, because I'm having a hard time remembering, who was the person that enforced that? Like, or not necessarily enforced, but kind of said, okay, I think you need to try this group plan. Because that was through a certain hospital, was
yes,
it? Yeah, okay.
Yes. So I originally went to a mental facility, a mental health facility, and I honestly can't remember if she was like a therapist or like a caseworker, but something along those lines. And I was kind of teetering on a weird line because I was 19, but I obviously still lived with my parents, and
which I remember was very hard.
Yes,
for parents to go, like watching our parents would go through that.
Yes.
I remember it was like very hard because they were like, what can we do here? She's an adult, but we want to try and do everything we can. And yeah, it's a hard line.
It is a hard line. And it is also difficult because, there is, you're kind of at a point where your parents can't step in, and, you're not a minor. So you're just kind of at the liberty of whatever they say. And I think they just feel kind of helpless. But it was that caseworker, therapist, whatever she was, that pretty much demanded I either had an option. I was either going to be checked in, or I had to start group therapy through one of their intensive, it's called IOP, intensive outpatient therapy. So I was very close to not getting that, but I'm so thankful that I did, because I do think that was like the start of the life-changing experience for me. So yes, that's where I started group therapy, and that was for 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for over a month. I almost want to say it was like month and a half. I can't remember exactly now, but it was when they say intensive outpatient therapy, it is intensive. But like I said, it was life-changing for me, so I'm very thankful that I did it.
Did you dread it at first?
I did, yes. And when I first walked in there, I walked into, actually it was at a time where the GM plant was doing a big layoff. And when things like that happen, layoffs, strikes, things like that, a lot of those employees go into intensive outpatient care like that because they suffer a lot of depression.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. So I walked in and it was, mostly 50 and up. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what am I walking into? Which is
making you like internally be like, why am I here?
Yes.
This is not me. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
And of course too, because they do group you like to who you have similar struggles with. But, I was just like, how am I ever going to get anything out of this? And this is, and of course I was nervous. And then I'm just like, we're not suffering from the same thing. As time went on, I kind of realized we were suffering from the same thing. But just in the beginning, I definitely dreaded it. And of course, like, I had no life because that was 3 hours of, that was the morning. And my mom had to pick me up and drop me off because I couldn't drive there for a while. They just wanted to keep a closer eye on me, which was fine. But yes, so I definitely dreaded it at first.
Mm-hmm. And so you obviously started medication at some point. Did that happen after this? Like, were you diagnosed and then medicated with certain things, or?
Well, that's an interesting part of my story because I actually started medication in the first place. It was early on in my freshman year of college with my women's health provider, my OBGYN. She's a nurse practitioner, but the OBGYN, she actually started me on the medication, which was a very low dosage of Zoloft, pretty mild. It wasn't anything serious. And then when things started to escalate. I can't speak. Anyway, when I mentioned later on in that freshman year, when my parents came and got me and I really started to have suicidal thoughts, around that point I started seeing another doctor who was just a primary care physician, and she actually switched my medication at the time. So I was on something different from that point in time. And then when I started into the IOP program, they also have psychiatrists there who work with you. And then so I was actually working with them as well, but still on the same medication. So there was lots of changes at lots of different points, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that leads me to the next, the second hard episode, which is, of course, like I said, was your second experience of, these heavy thoughts and then acting on them. And I know a lot of that had to do with being mistreated, right? Or like in a way of you were on the wrong meds. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like how you figured that out, like how you noticed, or who noticed really, that, whoa, you should not be on this medication, and this could be the reason behind this.
So when I was in the intensive outpatient treatment, the psychiatrist there didn't really make too many changes. They more so just monitored things because we really, they didn't know my case and my situation as well. But part of getting out of that program, you have to find a plan, a provider package kind of thing. And so you have to have a therapist and you have to have a psychiatrist lined up before you can get checked out of that program. So I happened to stumble across this person who was just kind of close by in the area. I can't really remember if they recommended him or what, but he was actually the first person on our first visit that said that this medication that you're on is way too much for you. It's really not even supposed to be given for your specific symptoms and what you had, which was mostly just depression, anxiety, and it was just misaligned for me. So that was the first person that.
And real quick, who prescribed this to you?
So that was the primary care physician in my college town, that I seen kind of randomly.
So not a psychiatrist, because I know we've talked about this, that like kind of stay in the lane that you're supposed to be in regards to your health. Like, you're not going to go see a foot doctor for something to do with your hand.
Absolutely.
So yeah, okay. So continue on with the psychiatrist was like, whoa, we should address and.
Yeah, so that's when we did immediately, and he really just got to know me. He spoke with me a lot more about my symptoms, everything that I had, experienced from that point in time, and I just felt so much more like at home with him. He really cared, and I think he was just like younger, and it just felt like he understood me more, so I was able to open up a lot more to him, and I felt like he really knew what he was talking about. You could tell he was experienced, and from that point forward, I really didn't have any issues with the medication that I was on or anything because he was a professional in the field and had extensive treatment. And so, yeah, but I definitely went through it before I met him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, he was the professional in the field. Like, so he was taking care of your care in a more skilled way. I feel like. Okay. So you come to realization that it was the wrong meds. We adjust those, and I feel like this is when your healing journey really started. And so I know you are now you still work with the therapist on and off that you found and that you really aligned with, you loved. Can you talk about your experience with her and also a little bit of EMDR? Because I know that played a huge part in your healing during therapy, because she offered this EMDR practice. So yeah, can you talk about both of those?
Yeah, so I felt like once I finally met my therapist, everything really just started to click into place. And one of the big things that she did do, like you mentioned, was EMDR. And one thing that really helped me was because she helped me understand that all of these things that I was feeling, I'm just thinking it's just life. And, I obviously had connected the different things that I've been through in my life. And I had an inkling that was, related to the symptoms that I was feeling. But she really helped kind of put everything into place of just like different traumas and things like that. And so she started to take me through EMDR pretty quickly. I would say like almost maybe like the first time I think we did, the first session I ever had, we started doing EMDR, and just on any and everything that possibly caused any type of emotion, triggered anything in me. And we did EMDR all the way from the point that I couldn't even remember as like a baby, which I think you start at 0 to 3 months. And so I went all the way through up until present time. So yeah, I feel like that was the most life-changing thing for me, was finding a therapist, just because she helped me understand, she helped me work through day to day, but then she also helped me work through all my trauma that I felt like was really tied to so much of what I was feeling.
Which is so huge, because the body keeps the score.
Yes, absolutely.
So many people, and I myself didn't even realize this until I had experienced it with you, and we obviously have had a million conversations about everything. But we talked about, the fact that these things, like things that may have happened to you when you were 2, your body, your subconscious is keeping that in, and you don't even realize it. And so can you explain a little bit about what EMDR is? Because I know you just touched on, your experience of it, but because a lot of people, I like for me, I really don't have an understanding. I think I know there's a practice where you hold on to something and it vibrates, it zaps.
Yeah. So there is a few different methods, and of course, I'm not an expert or like a professional. This is just my experience of what I did. There's a few different ways to do it. So like, there is like a light bar that you can look at. There is the things in your hand, and you can also just do it by tapping on the sides of your body. So essentially it is working with both sides of your brain and triggering different things. That's the point of, like, if you're watching a light bar move, or the vibrations are tapping, it's each side of your brain is moving. So basically you go back through the experience and you just kind of work through it. In a lot of sense, like a lot of the times that I was doing it, I was going back and just, it's so funny because you think it's so complicated, but it really just is like going back and giving yourself what you need in that time. And part of the, moving the both sides of your brain, it helps you go back and kind of reframe how you see the experience. So whatever that may be, you basically go in, you bring up the emotions, you put yourself all the way into the experience as if it was happening again, and then you just kind of reframe it. And whatever that looks like for you, it's different for everyone, but that is the process to help kind of take that, that tension and that like ball of energy that is negative, you're kind of taking that out of it and alleviating it so that when you're looking back on it, it's not so traumatic or so triggering for you.
So with talk therapy, so you did an EMDR, which was huge for you. What is your experience of talk therapy? Do you feel like this was something that you benefited because your therapist did something that you don't think is maybe standard for every other therapist? Do you think what set her apart, I guess?
I would say that the EMDR process definitely set her apart. And the fact that we didn't just talk, which on, sometimes, like, especially in my later time after I'd been in therapy for years, and I just needed to talk through my day. I think talk therapy was really effective for that kind of stuff, just kind of like problem solving and just going back and forth. And, we did a lot of like role playing conversations and like working on boundaries, things like that was good for talk therapy. But in terms of the actual like trauma and healing my whole childhood, I feel like EMDR is really what set that apart, just because it was so beneficial and made such an impact on me. And so I feel like had I not have had that, I don't think I would be where I am today, because I would still be, like you said, the body keeps the score. I'm still carrying all of that around that I've been carrying around since I'm essentially 3 months old all the way until 23, you know, that's just so much to carry. So I feel like that's what really set her apart.
And is it something that, so when you were doing the EMDR and you discovered like, okay, this is something coming up, let's deal with it. Is it something that you would go through during your therapy session through the EMDR and then work through it? And when you left, did you feel any type, like different? Did you, when you left, were you like, holy crap, like, I don't know what I just did, but I feel like 10 pounds lighter.
Oh, yeah.
So you could feel it almost immediately.
Yeah, almost
Wow.
immediately before I even left. And before, there were a few things that were, you know, sometimes when you bring up things that are really heavy, I've heard other people talk about this too. Sometimes you do have to work back down and kind of, you know, because you're in it, you're fully there, like as if it was happening again right in front of you. So sometimes you have to bring yourself back down. But for the most part, I felt better immediately afterwards. I mean, the feeling, you know, and she, usually a therapist will walk you like all the way through your feelings and you kind of communicate that to her. And I was always afterwards, like, I just feel so much lighter. Like, and I was always like 95% of the time I would cry afterwards just of like that relief.
It was a release.
Like, yeah. And just all like the emotions of just like happy tears. And just so I was in awe every time of like, I cannot believe that little thing, I was still, you know, thinking about that from when I was 5 years old. Like we're talking about 2005. And I'm just like, it was just crazy. So yeah.
Wow. Well, I love that for you. And I'm so glad you found her. I'm not going to say her name because I don't know if she wants to be a part of this, but
shout out to her. She knows who she is.
Yes, I love that. And so I want to talk about kind of what you have started on social media, and that is your wellness journey on topics that are more so naturally healing. So can you talk a little bit about your natural healing methods, what you do or what you did back then when you were in the thick of it, but then also just little practices that you do every day?
So I would say that in the thick of it, one of the things that really helped me out of it on top of working with a therapist was that I found the gym and just working out. I would say actually originally I just found moving my body. I would go on walks a lot. I did a lot of yoga, and I feel like just moving the energy physically out of my body made such a difference in me. And then once I found the gym, for me, the gym is less about the workout or the, you know, even less about the, you know, just moving the energy out. And it's more so that I built so much of a routine in my day, and I built so much confidence in myself of being able to just get up every day and just like show up and do that. And I was just like so proud of myself that I even could do that in the first place, that I actually committed to something. So I would say that was the biggest thing, just like moving my body and finding a practice. I also found meditation. I meditate pretty much every day. And when I was in the thick of it, kind of at the point right when I stopped taking medication, I set a plan for myself to meditate. I had 4 things. I would meditate, move, hydrate, and journal every day for 30 days. And I feel like that helped me kind of bridge the gap between not being medicated and being, you know, just getting through that time. So that was some of the big things that I did, because I feel like meditation is life-changing as well as moving your body, because I feel like just giving yourself the time to sit and relax and decompress, and then also just be at peace for a minute, I just feel like was really impactful on me, and I've seen it impact so many other people, so I'm very passionate about that too.
Yes, every day. I mean, I notice like when I try every day to start my day with meditation, because it just gives me that 10 minutes before the kids are up.
Yeah.
And then it's freaking, it's nuts. It is WWE in my living room at 6 a.m. So, are there any like apps or tips that you can give people? Because I know like when I first started meditating, I was like, you know, I have ADHD. I'm like, I get quiet. I'm like singing commercial tunes in my head. Yeah. But like, is there anything, like any tips or advice that you can give to somebody who is maybe wanting to try out this practice of meditating? Or like an app that you use, because I know I use an app, but what do you do to do that?
So my first tip that I always tell people is, if you want to start meditating, I think that you should start in the evening time, because you're already tired. So like right before you're going to go to bed, I just think that's a good place to start, even though I find it most beneficial. Well, actually, I would say I find it most beneficial both times, in the morning and the night. But a lot of times people do like to meditate, you know, like you said, start your day that way. But at night, you're already tired. Your brain's already starting to shut down. So that can be kind of a good way to just get yourself into it, and also start small. So start with just like a 5-minute meditation. It doesn't have to be crazy. Because if you're going into a 30-minute meditation, I mean, I'm not sitting through that right off the bat. Like that's overwhelming. I also would say that you have to kind of keep trying until you find what works for you. Because I know, like, my boyfriend, I played some of my meditations for him that I listened to, which I'll get to, and he was like, this isn't working for me. I don't like this. And so it's like, you just kind of have to try different people, different voices, different things, or, music or whatever you might find until you find what's right for you. It's kind of like a therapist. It's not one size fits all. So I like, it's on Spotify, and I think she does maybe website, but I don't know. I just listen on Spotify. It's Purely Being is her name, and her name's Lucy. She has this most like calming voice, and
I was gonna say, you have to align with the voice.
You do,
because
you do.
Like, there are some voices, like for me, I like women voices. For I don't know what it is.
I agree.
Maybe it's a rooted childhood thing, mommy,
right?
Mommy issues. I don't know. But I just like a woman's voice. I think I'm more soothed by that. But then I know people that are like, oh no, I like a man's voice, So
right.
It's, you definitely have to feel what you're listening to in order to get in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I just would say, like, just keep trying it. Don't give up. If you find somebody that you don't like or you don't vibe with that, just like try to find something else. There's so many out there. I use a lot on Spotify just because I already pay for the app. Most places nowadays do have that. I know, like, the Headspace app is good. There's a lot of good apps, but maybe you don't want to pay for that. So you can just look up something like on the music app you already pay for, or YouTube. You can even Google it. I also like Joe Dispenza meditations, but that's more of a manifestation stuff, not as much like peaceful and calm. It's just kind of a different vibe. So that's another thing. Like, there's a meditation for everything. There's a walking meditation, a driving meditation, like sleep, wake up. There's so many different things. So just kind of find what you like.
Yeah. And so back to natural healing ways. A lot of people don't realize it is diet too. And what things do you do in your diet specifically to promote mental health and wellness rather than, foods that are low vibrational, not great, and put you in a negative mindset?
Yes. So the number one thing for me is that I don't drink alcohol at all under any circumstance. I used to occasionally, I would have a drink at different times, but I always found myself, even if it was one drink, I would wake up feeling like crap the next day, or even during, especially during. I'm one of those people that...
mentally or physically?
I would say mentally, well, honestly, both mentally and physically, but definitely mentally, because I would just wake up feeling... I'm one of those people that always has like anxiety when they're drinking. I have anxiety after. Oh my God, what did I say last night? What did I do last night? I didn't like myself when I was drinking. So I feel like drinking was a number one thing for me to cut out in terms of just like getting myself on the right track, just like mentally, physically as well. But I never really drank that much. Well, I did, but up until recently, I never drank that much to be like super hungover. It was just the mental for me, and I just never really liked myself. And then I eat a pretty clean, healthy diet just because I feel like when I'm eating like crap, I'm going to feel like crap all the way around. I feel like it's mind, body, and spirit. It affects everything. Like if I'm eating cheeseburgers, I'm just not going to feel that great. So I feel like that's definitely a big thing for me. Even hydrating, and especially too, like, people don't realize when, you're eating something like a bunch of sugar and your blood sugar is raising so high, everyone knows that, your whole body's going up and down like this
all day.
And so your mood's going to be going up and down like that too, because everything's going up and down, and people just don't see a lot of those correlations. So just doing a lot of like protein and, things like that to just help me feel stable. It's just crazy the effects, everything's connected.
Oh yeah. And I noticed too, like, I'll get on a Starbucks coffee kick, and I'm in my lull right now.
Yeah.
So she's always on the phone with me when I'm like ordering. She's like, "Are you at Starbucks again?
Yeah.
I thought you were done with that." I'm like, "No, I needed a coffee."
I will straight call you out.
But I will notice, like, when I'm up in the morning and instead of like drinking my whole Stanley cup full of water, and I'm just like, "Ooh, I really want a Starbucks drink," and I drink that, and then I'm stuck on it the next 7 days or so, just every day. I notice that like my mental wellness is in the tank. Like, I'm just not productive. I'm like draggy, and then at midday I need something else. And it's crazy what food and diet change can do for you.
I know.
Really
and
is.
So many people don't see the connection, but the two are so related.
Yes. And so you mentioned it a little, you don't drink alcohol, and I love the reasoning behind that, because I think whether you're someone who struggles with mental wellness or not, you feel the effects of alcohol the next day, mentally and physically, for, if you drink too much.
Yeah.
And so what do you do to, like when you're going out, you're young, you're 23.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do when you go out or do you go out? Or obviously your peers, they're drinking, you're partying. It's just the age that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So is there something that you do that helps you stay out, have a good time, but you're not drinking alcohol?
Well, to be 100% honest, this probably isn't going to be the greatest answer, but I really don't go out because I found that my friends that were still kind of in that mindset of going out, and it's no judgment at all, we're just kind of in different places. I'm not going to enjoy a club when I'm not drinking. That just is what it is. But also because that's not me. Sometimes people can do that. Every once in a while I do enjoy that. But if I am to do it, or a lot of times it's just, it's not even so much going out as it's just like being at dinner and everybody has like a drink that looks good. So I've recently discovered mocktails, which I feel like is like the greatest thing.
I love a good mocktail.
Yes. And I will reward myself. And if I'm at somewhere like that doesn't have a mocktail, for example, like, I don't know, a dive bar or something, like I'll be like, oh, I'll have a Dr. Pepper. Like, because I'm like, if I'm going to treat myself, I'll just do something, to make me just feel like I'm a little bit more like a part of it, or, I kind of like get that relief in a way, I guess, because I feel like a lot of people just drink to like, I don't know, like de-stress, even though it doesn't really work, but that's the thought behind it. So that's kind of how I feel. And then I also just go into it with the mindset of like, I don't want to feel bad, like crap, fill in the blank, whatever it is, while I'm doing this or the next day. And so that keeps me from like having the FOMO of missing out on drinking.
You have like a mental dialogue with yourself.
Yes,
before
I do.
You go out. You're like, hey, remember.
Yeah. But
we don't like this.
No, exactly. And I do that because every once in a while I am like, but it's overall, I just have to remind myself that it's really not good for me. But to answer your question, I really don't go out. So it's not a big thing for me. I've just kind of found my group of people that do similar things to me, and I just occupy my time differently than I used to.
So we've talked about this before too, but I want to bring it on the show because what we've talked about is that a lot of people I don't think are aware of this as much, and that is drinking alcohol when you are taking antidepressants or anything along those lines. And what it does to you. So I know you have experiences that you can share on just a little bit. And then also the fact of like, you're not supposed to drink alcohol like at all. And a lot of doctors may not tell you that. I don't even think it's listed on the bottle. Is it?
It is listed on the bottle.
Okay.
But it's likely that you may not even see it, honestly. I definitely had tons of experiences, especially when I was in college at Mizzou and going out all the time. I mean, actually, every time I was out, I was blacking out off of, I really never drank anything crazy. I mean, we're talking maybe 3 to 4 drinks. And I was like blacked out, couldn't remember anything into the next morning because I was on that medication. And out of all the doctors that I seen, nobody told me you cannot drink on this medication. And if they did, it wasn't memorable enough. So it was
right. It would stand out enough to be like, whoa, okay.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not gonna try that.
Right. Exactly. It wasn't as serious of a conversation. And I think maybe even the people who do know just think like, oh, whatever. And I've had so many like scary experiences that really were triggering for me because I was drinking. And I mean, I even had somebody that came to me not too long ago that was like, I'm going to start taking a medication. And I was like, okay, you cannot drink on that. And they're like, what? Like, and they had just left their doctor and they're like, what do you mean I can't drink? And I'm like, you can't drink on those medications. It will, you have your tolerance is not there. And then it can also trigger suicidal thoughts if you're on, depending on the medication, which is actually something that did happen to me at one point in time. And it's just crazy that people don't know. And I mean, you'll have all these people that are like, yeah, I just black out. And then you find out they take antidepressants and it's scary. You don't know what can happen to you. And just the fact that more people don't know that is scary in itself.
I can think of at least 5 people off the top of my head that I know that have this problem. Is they're like, gosh, I only had a couple drinks. Like, I have no idea why I can't remember anything and why I acted the way that I did. And it's like, it's literally that you are on this medication and 1, 2, 3, 4 drinks is enough to send it over the edge.
It is. And I mean, people have crazy, scary things that happen to them, all the time when they're drinking and they're on prescription medicine because that's in your body. It's supposed to be in your body and last all throughout the day for, that's supposed to be what helps you. So it's, it has a strong presence in your body, that medication, and then mixing it is just scary and dangerous. And yeah, like I said, so many people don't know about that, and they should. That should be the first conversation that a doctor has.
Yeah, because we live in a drinking society.
Yes.
Really, I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's everywhere.
Yeah. Wow. So you've reached a place of no longer being on meds, which is huge. I'm very proud of you. So that deserves a moment in itself. And so how long did that take from the time that you started this whole journey, when you were first diagnosed, first put on medicine, to stop taking it? And was it a cold turkey process, or I guess what was the process? Was it cold turkey, or was it some steps you had to go through?
So it was some steps. I essentially was on it for, let's see, so it would have been about 3 years. And at the point that I was thinking about, that I even started to think about stopping, I had several conversations with my therapist, and then I just started talking with my psychiatrist, who at that point I met with like I want to say it was every maybe like 4 months. It was pretty low maintenance at that point, because for the most part I was okay. I really hadn't had anything crazy going on. It was more so just almost like maintenance I felt like I was taking it for. And so I basically just said, I don't really feel like I need this anymore. My therapist feels the same way. You know, we were all three on the same page. And you know, my psychiatrist at the time agreed with me that he thought it would be okay to stop taking it. But for some reason, it was just, I think I was nervous because I thought I was going to digress maybe, or I don't know. But thankfully,
of course, I'm sure that was the first thought on your mind.
Yeah, because I didn't know,
you're like, I trust myself, but I'm scared at the same time.
Exactly. Because, you know, I had been on this and I'm like, okay, am I good because of all the things I'm doing, or am I good just because I'm taking this medication? But eventually I was able to stop, and it was I tapered off of it, which thankfully, like I said, I had a professional that I trusted, which was my psychiatrist, that, you know, helped me through the process. And then, you know, he was just, once we were done and, you know, we were following up, and at my last appointment, he's just like, if you ever need anything again, just feel free to call. If you have any kind of thoughts or anything of that sort, you know, just call me and we'll revisit. And if we need to go back on something, it's no big deal. So I think just having both of them, my psychiatrist and my therapist, help me through that was really beneficial. And I definitely felt a lot better. I did not feel worse after taking it. I was worried for nothing, or after not taking it, I was worried for nothing. I felt a lot better. So it was the right step to take. It was just, you know, it's just nerve-wracking.
Yeah. And so when you decided and you had all these conversations and you were like, okay, I'm ready, I'm going to do it, was it a process of like, you just stopped taking it, or was it like you have to half doses, or like what was the instructions you received from your doctors and medical professionals?
It was half doses. It was like half doses, and then I can't remember exactly, but it was something like half doses and then down to like every other day, and then it was eventually nothing, which I would always advise if someone were ever to ask me my opinion. Of course, I'm not a medical professional, but if someone was to ask me my opinion, I would always advise that you work through that with a doctor, just because
absolutely. Well, yeah, because it's kind of like with alcohol. It's mind altering.
It is, and anything that's mind altering, you know, should be worked through with a professional. It's not something that you should just take off, because it can have really negative side effects depending on what you're on. If you just stop taking that, you can have suicidal thoughts, you know, anything can happen. So I think that that's the number one step. And I know that other people probably do it differently depending on what they're on, but it was kind of a stair-step process for me.
And so I know you mentioned like at that point you felt like it was just maintenance. But were there any other reasons of why you ultimately wanted to no longer take medication anymore?
Well, I started to find myself being a lot more interested in just an overall like natural kind of organic lifestyle. And I honestly started questioning, and I'm like, I don't even know what's in this. Like, I don't even know what this medication is. And I felt like if I'm at a point where I feel like I don't have to take it to keep me from feeling suicidal, then why would I be putting this in my body at all? You know? And so I just felt like,
because like all medications, it has other side effects that you may not know are going on.
Exactly. And I just felt like I didn't want, you know, those chemicals, and, you know, because essentially it is a chemical. I just didn't want that in my body anymore if I didn't have to, you know.
So if you ever come across mental wellness regression, what do you do in times that you feel yourself slipping into a negative mindset? And, you know, how do you deal with that?
So the number one thing that I do if I'm feeling like it's a strong regression is that I call my therapist. I don't meet regularly with my therapist anymore. I probably haven't for maybe the last 6 months to a year. We don't do it like our weekly visit. But I will pop in every once in a while just for like a visit, and that always gets me back on track. If it's something that I'm just kind of feeling like I'm having an off day, I definitely will try to do something that involves moving my body. So either going to the gym, going for a walk outside. I really like being outdoors just because I feel like it resets your whole nervous system.
Outdoors is huge.
Yes.
Like when I'm on my computer too long going outside, I'm just like,
you need the sunlight. And I just feel like all of that, like, is it the dopamine or the oxytocin, something, whatever you're getting from,
I think
like,
it's both.
both,
all of it.
Yeah, so I feel like that is just so beneficial, just like getting outdoors. I will stretch, I will meditate, I will go back to what I know works for me and honestly works for everyone, just to bring myself back on track. And usually there is something like going on, like I just haven't been, there's always something behind it that I just have to bring myself back to, like, okay, I know what works, I know what's good for me, and I know that it's like moving my body, meditating, self-care. I really like to just like do something positive for myself. I always just know that I need to bring myself like almost back to my center, like back to my home of like, I know what I need, to do for me.
Yes. So like I mentioned, you've become an advocate on social media. And I love that for you because as horrible and hard as this whole experience was for you at such a young age, there's the other silver lining that you feel it kind of happened to you for a reason, because it has brought you to the point of like being able to help other people, which I think is so incredibly rewarding. And I love that you're on this journey. So do you have any advice for someone who was you in college, all these feelings are coming on you at such a vulnerable time in your life? What would you say to somebody who was the 19, 18-year-old you?
The first thing that I would say is to find somebody to talk to. So for me, that was my best friend at the time, Emma, and my mom and my stepdad. I eventually just felt like I had to come clean with, what I was feeling, because I was just alone and everything was inside for so long. So that's the number one thing, is that you have to find somebody to talk to, no matter who that is, whether that's a therapist, someone in your family, it's a friend, it's a counselor at your school. There is somebody who is there to listen to you and someone who is absolutely willing to help you. You just have to find them and to talk to them. Yes. That's the first thing that I would say. And then I would ask that person to help kind of guide you into what the next step to take. For me, that was therapy. That may not be for everyone, but I do feel like that can have a strong effect, because chances are, if you're feeling such intense emotions in terms of like depression, anxiety, stress, any of that, there's probably something more, below the surface that you probably need to look at and needs attention. And it's some part of you is needing to be acknowledged, worked on, something. So I would recommend therapy. That's always my kind of go-to. And, I would just start looking at your lifestyle and seeing, is there different things that you can change? For me, I was drinking every chance I could get, multiple times a week. So I would look at, how do I feel when I do this? It may be something else. For me, it was drinking. It may be something else for somebody else. It's like, how do I feel after I'm doing this? What kind of things in my life? Just kind of take yourself up out of your life and just kind of look at what might be. Reflect and see what might be kind of triggering some things, and, just kind of get started somewhere.
Well, I love it. And so where can people, because I'm sure so many people are going to resonate with you and, want to follow your story and your journey and all the tips and tricks that you have to share. So what is the best place for people, or where is the best place for people to find you? And what are those handles? So
Instagram and TikTok probably would be the place to find me. And everything is Chyna Piel, which is ChynaPiel. That's where you can find me on everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. And I have to tell you, I'm so proud of you. I love you. And I think you are incredibly brave for sharing your story. And by your bravery, I think you have helped at least one person listening to this show, if not hopefully more. So thank you so much.
Hope so. Thank you so much for having me. And my DMs are always open to anyone who, I can be that person for you. So thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Bye. As always, I appreciate you all so much for listening. My goal is for these episodes to at least help one person in some aspect of their life. So if you like what you hear, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe to the show, as well as follow us on social media at Inside Voice Pod. Thanks.